Hello everyone, this is Siddharth Patel from the Department of Political Science and Public Administration, the Bhopal School of Social Sciences. In this video, we are going to learn about the determinants of foreign policy. In previous videos, we have already discussed that what is foreign policy and how an state interact in an outer world. Now here, we will discuss that how the foreign policy of any country determine. So, the foreign policy is never determined by any one factor or set of factors, but it is a result of large number of factors. The first being economic development, second domestic structure and social structure, international environment, military strength, history, geography, etc. So, we will be starting with these all determinants and how geography determine the foreign policy of a country, how history determine the foreign policy of a country, etc. and so on. So, let us begin with geography. Napoleon says any country's foreign policy is determined by its geography. Suppose if we talk about India, the foreign policy of India is determined by its location. If I talk about China, the foreign policy of China is determined by its location. As well as Nicholas Spikeman says, ministers come and go, even dictators die, but mountain range stand unperturbed. Now what here it means that government may come and government may go. Like every 5 years we see a change in government, but the geography of a country remains the same. In India, from past 75 years, we have witnessed so many government come and go, but the location of India remains the same. We know our neighbors, that is Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, Myanmar, Bhutan, Nepal, and we determine our foreign policy considering the geographical location of our country. Now, Indian Ocean is a connecting link between the Atlantic and Pacific with all major shipping routes. 80% of China's oil import and 85% of India's trade passes through it. Even historically, Britishers and even the Portuguese established their control through Indian Ocean. Now let us understand with the help of the map. See, if you are seeing the Indian Ocean over here and Atlantic Ocean over here. So it is a connecting link. If any country want to trade with Europe or Russia, Europe or America, it trades through Indian Ocean. So the map of country is very much important because the location of the Indian Ocean made it strategically very important. Now moving ahead, if I talk about the geography, even we can say about the Suez Canal. British have maintained their naval presence in Suez Canal since 1956. Now, through this map, we can locate that Suez Canal is here and Britishers have not left Suez Canal since 1956. Even though many countries got independence, but Britishers have maintained their presence in Suez Canal because of its geographical location, because major trade passes through only this location. Even the Singapore port till 1970s, because again Singapore port is an important place or it is an important on a strategic location. French, USA, China all have established their naval bases in Djibouti at the Horn of Africa. Now if I talk about Djibouti, it is here Djibouti. Now all these countries have presented their naval base in Djibouti because of its location. If you see, the proximity between the Suez Canal and Djibouti is very less, and if a trade passes through Suez Canal and then it goes to Asia, so here come an important location of Djibouti. So if you want to stop the trade or if you want to lock the Indian Ocean, you can maintain your presence on Djibouti. That is why these countries are so much interested in the Djibouti. Now India has secured an access to Dwigham port in Oman in 2018 for military and logistic, and we have located or we have strategically acquired or we have strategically have some access to Dwigham port because in Pakistan, China is developing a Gwadar port. So in response to Pakistan, India have maintained its some presence on Dwigham port to have a check on Gwadar port. So if I take this example, every country work on its geographical location. Every country work on its geographical location because our foreign policy is determined through our geography. Now here is the location of Djibouti. If you want to see in a clear map, you can see that Djibouti is located here and here is Suez Canal. So from Suez Canal to Djibouti, all these trade route passes like this. Now moving ahead, it is a map showing of India. Now here Nepal is very much strategically located for India, very much strategically important for India. Why? Because here we are witnessing China, it is in India, and Nepal is a landlocked state, or I can say Nepal is a buffer country. Now what is a buffer country? A small country between a two larger nation. So what Nepal do? Nepal tries to gain as much as possible from China, and Nepal also tries to gain as much as possible from India, because Nepal's strategical location made it very important country. The same manner, Bhutan's strategical location also made it very important country. Bhutan is located here. Again, on above we witness China, and in downside we see it is in India. So Bhutan is strategically located or strategically important for our northeastern region. So therefore India tried to maintain a good relation with Nepal as well as with Bhutan. Now moving ahead, the next determinant of foreign policy is domestic politics and social structure. Even the country's domestic politics and social structure also determine the foreign policy of our country. Now let us take an example and let us understand this topic with some theories. Now democratic state never wage war against each other. Suppose India is a democratic nation and USA is a democratic nation, or Bangladesh is a democratic nation. So India and Bangladesh will never go for an war, because in democracy people ask a question. Suppose if India is preparing for war, so we the citizen of India, we will be questioning our government that is there any requirement for war, because war causes casualty, war requires money. Okay. So the students or the citizens ask the government that war is necessary or not. So democratic state never go against war with each other. War is a rare event in international arena. However, war between democratic nation is rarer. Although in 21st century war is a rare event, but still you get to know some news like Russia-Ukraine war is going on, and ample amount of news you are reading about China and so on. But a democratic nation never go for war against each other. Now if I take an example of Russia and Ukraine, here in Russia we do not see a complete democracy. Here we are seeing a rule of one particular leader or a one particular party. So here the war against Russia and Ukraine is normal because Russia is not a democratic nation. What I am focusing here is a democratic country never goes for war against another democratic nation. The explanation of these above points are mentioned here. Dispute must be settled through peaceful means and institutional and structural factors, because in democracy we are more interested in peace. In democracy we talk about कि बातचीत से मामले सुलझा लेंगे, है ना. In democracy we talk, let us talk and solve our dispute, solve our issues by talking only or by explaining only. And in democracy the parliament asks the question from the government. Suppose let us take an example, the Parliament of India ask a question from the government of India that why you are implementing these policies, that why you are going for a war. So in democracy there is an institutional factors, there are some institutional factors that ask a question from the government. Even the judiciary asks the question from government that whether the war is necessary or not. So therefore it is said that democratic country never goes for war against another democratic country. Now federalism and Indian foreign policy. how the federalism, how the federal structure of India influences the foreign policy of a country. In Nehruvian era, we have witnessed that there was a domination of single party. In every state, even at the central level, we were witnessing that there was a complete Congress rule. So the government of that time was able to take any decision they want. But even in the Indira Gandhian era, we have witnessed that there was an excessive centralization of power, and Indira Gandhi was a very powerful lady. So here also the foreign policy decisions were solely taken by the central government. But after 1990s, what we were witnessing is that there are coalition government at the center. And when there are coalition government, the central government is not in a position to take decision. Central government has to negotiate with various regional party to come to a particular solution. Suppose an issue is going on between India and Bangladesh, the central government has to consider the advice of Chief Minister of West Bengal, and then we have to take the decision. But even in the present era, as we are witnessing that it is an majority government, so we are witnessing again the centralization of foreign policy. The decision of foreign policy are taken by the central government only. Social composition may influence the foreign policy, as we have seen that India and Canada has good relation. Why? Because Canada is considered a mini Punjab, है ना, वहाँ पे बहुत सारे पंजाबीज हैं. So it also influenced the foreign policy of our country because the social composition, Punjabis are inhabitants of India and they have migrated and settled in the Canada. So the Canadian government cannot do anything wrong against these people because they have acquired their citizenship. And every country or every government wants excessive power, or they work in politics for power only. So the Canadian government will try to establish a good relation with India so that they can influence or they can make happy these Punjabis. There is an also distinct possibility that shared culture or ethnic linkage may become source of mistrust. Like India and Nepal relation have some sort of mistrust due to Madhesis. These Madhesis are Indian habitant people and they have settled in the Nepal. But Nepal government have not given them such right, so it become a source of conflict. So shared culture or social composition may create a good relation or it may hamper the relation with another country. Moving forward, international relation also helps to determine the foreign policy of a country. International environment has been a crucial determinant of foreign policy of any country. Changing nature of international political structure, which prompts a country to bring a shift in foreign policy. Every country acts according to international environment, that what is going on in the outer world right now, and every country take decision basis on that only. Now let us take an example. When India got independent, there was a Cold War going on between USA and USSR. The world was divided into two blocks. USA is led by capitalism, or capitalism is led by USA, or communism is led by USSR. So the complete world is divided into two blocks. At that time, our leaders decided to pursue the policy of non-alignment movement. We have not joined either of the bloc because India tries to gain as much as possible from USA and as much as possible from USSR. But after the integration of USSR and collapse of communism, India have started moving, or India have tilted towards somewhat capitalism, as well as we are having the welfare policy, but we have started shifting towards capitalism. So it is shown in your slide that in 1950 to 1960, India, during the Cold War period, India has maintained the policy of non-alignment movement. Then in 1960 to 1970, India has tilted toward USSR because USA was helping Pakistan. But after 1990s, after the Cold War end, Indian foreign policy have been tilted towards USA, and even in the present era, Indian government is trying to maintain a good relation with USA as well as USSR, because international environment tell us to maintain a good relation with both the countries, because it will prosperous the growth of India only. Now, economic development also helps in determination of foreign policy. If I say you which country is developed, or if I ask that why Britain, Germany, USA are known as developed nation, they are known as developed nation because of their economy. In present era, we talk about economy. Now, let us take an example. Like you have heard in Hindi various time कि पैसा है तो सब कुछ है. So even if you ask about yourself, if you have money, you can buy anything in the market. So the same case goes in the world politics. If you have money, all countries will follow you. But if you don't have money, you have to bargain with the other country. So economic development determines the foreign policy of any particular country. The ability to use the aid and to pursue higher military development is limited by the financial ability of the state. If we have money, we can give aid to the different nation also. Even we can use that money to buy more and more military equipment. As well as the size of economy matter. Like if we talk about the 21st century India, as we are growing in terms of economic power, so all countries are listening the views of India. Now, India is a prominent key maker or a prominent role. India has the prominent role in the world politics. Now, moving ahead, in the present era, we see it is an era of complex interdependence. Complex interdependence means with the onset of globalization, it has interlinked all the countries in a way through trade. Now, India and China are so much interdependent. Even we have issues, even we have border issue, but India is dependent on China, and even China is dependent on India, because from India they get lots of money, because India is a huge market for China. So, in the era of complex interdependence, in the era of globalization, there is an economic interdependence among the nation, and these economic interdependence stop the country to go against the war or to go for the war. These complex interdependence stop the country to never have a war and maintain a good relation with another country. Now, moving ahead, here is a map like how we all are interdependent, like India's look west policy, like India's recent policies, look west policy. Now, why our government has come up with look west policy? Because this region, the Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, Iran, they have good ample oil resources, and India is trying to maintain a good relation with all these countries through the policy of look west, because in terms of economy, we are dependent on these countries for our oil imports, for our oil necessities. So, India is trying to formulate its policy like we can make happy all the country and we can gain as much as possible. Now, role of military in determination of foreign policy. Military strength is vital to achieve the objective of foreign policy of a country. Today, military strength is important. We all are trying to acquire as much as arms and ammunition as possible. Even though we talk about economic dependence more, economy more, but still we cannot ignore the arms and equipment or military. Military strength is required for territorial expansion as well as for defensive purpose. Territorial expansion means if we want to attack any other country, we need a military power. And if we want to defend our country from the another country, again we need a military power. To secure our territory, to secure our sovereignty, to secure our integrity, military strength is very much important. Arms and ammunition are very much important, and the government of all the countries try to give as much as importance to military strength of the country. When military strength is necessary for securing the territory, for the territorial integrity of the state, pursuing aggressive militarization may trigger the similar reaction from the other state, eventually triggering an arm race, increasing the possibility of war and creating a region unstable. suppose if India try to acquire, or if India try to acquire more and more arms and ammunition, the similar effect we will be see in Pakistan. And if Pakistan try to acquire more and more arms and weapons, similar effect we will be seeing in India. Okay, so if any country is trying to acquire more and more arms and ammunition, it is practical that other country will also try, or the neighboring countries will also try to acquire more and more arms and ammunition. Now, there is a role of history also in forming the foreign policy of any particular country. Historical experiences of imperialism, colonialism, racial discrimination lead a significant impact on formulation of Indian foreign policy. It led towards a non-aligned approach. India supported decolonization movement in Asia and Africa, as well as India's strong stand against apartheid in South Africa. As we have witnessed that India was a colony of British Empire 100 years ago or 200 years ago, if I talk about like that. In these 75 years, we have achieved a lot. But if I talk about past 75 years, we were a colony of British. And even India have supported the national movement of African nation because we have feel the pain of colonialization. India is even against the racial discrimination of African countries, even in the America, because we have feel the racial discrimination in our country. So these are some factors that determine the foreign policy of a particular country. Like if I talk about, first one was geography, second one was I talk about is role of history, third one being is economic development, fourth is military strength, then domestic structure and politics and history. These 6 factors influence the foreign policy of country. I hope you have got everything, and I hope you have understood the topic. So I will be meeting you in next video with the relation with some another country. Thank you.